2 months ago, I made a video called The 4 Steps Before Building Your First Project, where I talked about the process that any beginner can follow to start their first project and escape tutorial hell. So in this video, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about how to properly finish your project, because you shouldn't just finish coding and leave there. This process consists of 4 steps. Don't imagine anything crazy, it will take you max 1 hour if you're a beginner. So because I don't want to waste your time, let's begin. Finally, you just wrote the last line of code in your process. The first step now to properly close it up is to scroll back up and start correcting any bugs that you find. Yeah, okay, your code may be working, but chances are that there are some lines that are causing some errors and generally are not behaving the way that you would like them to. Spending that extra time in order to fix those small or not so small bugs will really develop your problem solving skills, and it will give you a ton of experience, something that you should look after as a beginner. If you want more info on bugs and how to solve them, I have recently uploaded a whole video on this topic. What does cleaning your code mean? Well, it's kinda similar to fixing bugs, but it has to do more with how your code looks and is structured. If you're a beginner, the way you structure your code is probably terrible to be honest. But that's completely normal. It's not anything to worry about, as long as you're gradually improving, of course. Firstly, remove any unnecessary piece of code. That could look like deleting any useless print statements or removing any imported files that you don't use. I think you get the point. Then scroll through your code and see if your variables and functions have meaningful names. For example, you have a function that takes 2 numbers and returns their sum. You're not going to name it s underscore function underscore 1 underscore 2, right? You're going to name it something like add underscore numbers. That's really simple, right? Another thing that you could do, if you have the necessary knowledge of course, is to move parts of your code to other files. For example, you could move all of your functions to another file in order to keep your main file cleaner and easier to understand. In other words, you want to make sure that everything is clear. You might come back to this project one day, and if that happens, you want to be able to understand what your past self wrote. When I revisited my older projects, a good part of my time there is spent trying to decipher what my younger self built, and that's such a waste of time. According to Google, code documentation is the process of creating description and comments that explain how a piece of code works, what it does, and how to use it. Doing this helps other programmers and also your future self understand what you build, and that's super important if you want to work in teams later on or create larger projects. You can see this as an extension of the last step. By this point you have removed any unnecessary piece of code, and you have also modified your program structure to make it cleaner. Now the next step is to add description about what each block of code does. The easier form of documentation is comments, and I believe you already know about them by this point. But just to be sure, programming languages have comments, which are basically nodes that you can leave between or next to your code in order to explain what's happening. In Python, for example, you create a comment by typing a hashtag and then the sentence that you want. You can also add doc strings to your functions and classes. These are just larger multi-line comments that explain in more detail what a function or class does. Very simply put. In Python, we usually write them right after the function declaration. I don't know about other languages. To build one, you add a triple quote and then type inside of that. Anyway, I think that that's all that you need for documentation for your first project. So let's move on to the last step. All the previous steps have been a preparation for this one. Now it's time to upload your project to GitHub. But why should you upload as a beginner? I mean, your first project is trash. Well, if you start uploading, it becomes easier to track your progress, and you also get to know how to use GitHub, which is a tool that you must learn if you're serious about becoming a better programmer. So, how can you upload a project? Very simply put, create a GitHub account, create a new repository, and upload your files in it. Now, I know it may be confusing, but if you need further help, there are a ton of tutorials online. Create a repository, make it private or public, whatever you want, and then just upload your files in it. GitHub will also ask you to create a README file, which is basically a file where you explain what your program does and how to use it. Basically like documentation. If your project creates any extra files like temporary logs or environment folders, you can use a gitignore file to prevent them from being uploaded. Don't worry about it too much right now, you'll learn it naturally as you progress through your journey. But I advise you to search it up as a concept before uploading your first project. Know that you can edit or delete your repositories later on if you want to, but it's perfectly fine to upload your first project even if it is terrible. You should be open to criticism because it can actually help you move forward. Anyways, that's all for today. I hope my advice was helpful and I didn't waste your time. If so, consider pressing the subscribe or the like button. Learning how to properly handle projects will really help you become a better programmer, so yes, keep building and practicing. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for today. Remember to start building using the knowledge that you already have faith in Jesus Christ, and take care.